Okay, guys, let's talk about immigration during this time period. We're going to actually go a little bit before this time period to we talked about before how our human resources were the most important of all of our resources. Well, human labor is fueled by immigration, and from 1860 to 1890, our U.S. population grew by 44 million people, from 31 million to 75 million. Most of that was from immigration. So you can see here this rise of population, this huge increase of people in the United States. And these are the different waves. So earlier, 1815 to 1860, we had about 5 million immigrants come into our country, mainly from England, Ireland, Germany, the northern European areas. So they came in, they were, the Irish were very poor. That was that potato famine, which we're going to talk about. 1865 to 1890, we had 10 million immigrants, mainly from, again, northwestern Europe. And then 1890 to 1914, that's our third wave, 15 million immigrants. And these are from Italy and Greece and Romania, our Jewish immigrants from Russia and from Germany, Turkish, Lithuanian, Austria-Hungary. So this is a very different type of people, and these are the three waves of immigration into the United States. So again, here's another chart, and this shows the immigration, people coming into the United States from 1820 through 1901. So let's talk about some of these groups. Okay, the Irish, mostly that, remember that second wave of immigration, about 2 million Irishmen are going to be coming into the United States, and mostly because of a horrible, horrible potato famine that occurred. Almost 1 million people in Ireland actually starved to death. It was a blight, and that was their main crop. And kind of ironic, isn't it? Because if we go back to that Columbia Exchange, they didn't have potatoes until the New World was founded, and then it became their main source. And these folks, when they came in, they settled in New York City, Boston. They ended up moving across the country, but they were very much discriminated against. They had signs indoors that said, "No Irish need apply." So NIRA, and they had this reputation for being drinkers and being lazy, which was certainly not deserved. German immigrants, which were again part of that second wave, about 1 million. They came for a couple of reasons: crop failures and political persecution. A lot of them will settle in the Midwest, and they are going to be a little bit better off than the Irish. They have money, they bring their instruments with them, they form orchestras, they have skills, and you probably know breweries like Pabst Blue Ribbon and Michelob and so forth. So these are very industrious people. We actually have a large German group that are going to come in and settle just north of Lake Pontchartrain and bring their culture. Kindergarten is actually a German word, and they value education, and they are going to be moving mostly in the Midwest. German Jews are going to be coming during the 1840s. They are coming for religious freedom, and because they had not been allowed to own property when they were in Germany, most of them were tradesmen, and they're going to settle in the cities, and they're going to open shops. There'll be tailors, bankers, bakers, jewelers, different occupations, and of course you have different types of Jewish communities. You've got the very, very religious Hasidic Jews, and then different types, but these mostly, almost most Jewish people are going to be settling in this wave in the various cities. Your Chinese are coming in because of abject poverty in China. And they come over basically after the gold is found in California. They're going to be working in the mining industry and, of course, in the railroad. We talked about them working in the Central Pacific Railroad. And Chinese people, very industrious, very hardworking. Some of them are just trying to make enough money to go back home. Some of them are bringing their families here. But they actually had brokers that would bring people over, and they would translate for them and get them work. Your Russian and Slavic countries, these folks will come in this later third wave of immigration for economic freedom. A lot of the Russian and Slavic countries they'll settle in Michigan, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, and basically farming communities. And this is probably about 1 million from Russia and the Slavic countries. Are Italians. Okay, 4 million Italians are going to be coming to the United States in this third wave of immigration. And basically they are poor people, and they are looking for economic opportunity, and mostly will settle again in the cities. Moving across the country, our Italian heritage is very, very, very important in the United States. Large group of Italians will settle in New Orleans and along some of the coastlines, but we can find the Italian influence throughout the United States. Now, Sicily, if you look here at the map, technically part of Italy, but if you're Sicilian, you are very different from the mainland of Italy. The mafia, that is, if you've ever seen The Godfather, the mafia, to be in the mafia, you pretty much have to be a Sicilian. Now you can see they're surrounded by water. A lot of Sicilians are going to settle in New Orleans and coastal areas. They're fishermen. Some of them are growing wine, grapes for wine, and they will also settle in the cities. So it's an overpopulated area, and you're going to get probably, again, about 1 million people from Sicily immigrating into the United States during this period. So we had German Jews earlier in that second wave. We're going to get the Russian and Eastern European Jews during this third wave. And these are typically poorer. They have been oppressed by pogroms and persecution. We'll talk about pogroms in just a second. And when they come to America, they will move to the Jewish communities, work for the established Jews that are there. It's a very tight community. They believe in education, and we're going to have a very large group come in from Russia and Eastern European areas. So a pogrom, those of you who had Miss Langdon probably learned about pogroms. They were far too common, carried out in Eastern European and Russian areas, and basically they were organized massacres. And they would go into Jewish communities and sometimes kill or just torment Jews. Pogrom is a Russian word for riot. So, long before Hitler, there was anti-Semitism going on. And sadly, the pogroms were a result of this anti-Semitism. This is what people saw when they were coming into the United States. For those of you who've never been to New York City, it is a beautiful sight. So the boats are coming in, and they see this symbol of freedom, our Statue of Liberty, and they will be processed at Ellis Island. And during this period of time, 1892 to 1954, over 16 million people are processed at Ellis Island. And they had an amazing system. 1 million people a year, 5,000 people a day could be processed through the facilities there at Ellis Island. And they kept records, which are now available on computers. They've been put on computers, and Ellis Island is now a museum. You can actually go in there and type in names, and it shows all different spellings and when people came in, and a lot of people do that looking for their roots. So this is showing what the people see, and so they come in on these big boats, and then they're put on smaller boats that bring them in for processing. And so you can see here they've been loaded onto the smaller boats, and they are landing at Ellis Island and being brought in barges to be processed. And as they are doing that, families are given numbers. So you might have a very large family, and you can see here you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and probably the husband is off getting the numbers and getting them ready. You can tell whether people are rich or poor usually by their luggage. And you can see here this is a cloth bag, and this is probably indicating that these folks don't have a whole lot of money. These are Russian Jews. Once again, you can kind of look at the clothes. We talked about how these are usually poorer people. You can see the tattered coats and how it's just kind of held together. It looks like maybe with a pin here. So they're getting ready to be processed. Okay, this is an example of the numbers. So this is one family, and all the families have been given number 22. So what's the purpose of this? So when they're given these numbers, you can see here there are 8 people in this family. So when the father goes up to give them all the information, they go through one at a time. What's the name? Where you're born? What's the birth date? And so forth. And then where are you going? So if the young'un runs off, probably can't speak English, but wearing a number 22, you can get that child back to its family. So this was just a way to organize people, and kind of a good way. It worked very well. Okay, these are folks from Norway, and probably have a little bit of money. You can see a trunk here, and he's got a nice musical instrument. And these folks are probably off to maybe Wisconsin. A lot of Norwegians in Wisconsin. There's a large community actually in Iowa, and probably have family, and so they've got means. Like this picture, these people from the Netherlands, Dutch peasants, mother, son, daughter-in-law, grandchild, and their traditional headgear here. Folks from Sweden, and again, probably Wisconsin, yes, Wisconsin, and farm girls, and they might have been sent for to get married off, and there was quite a bit of that where girls came over and answering an advertisement to come and get married off and live in America. I love this one. Okay, this is a Russian family in the Dakota Territories, and people always are looking at this little girl on the right-hand side, kind of spooky looking, and somebody said this kind of looks like a spooky movie. You wouldn't want to come on this family, but they're used to those cold temperatures, and this is one large family from Russian family that's going to be in the Dakota Territories. A Slavic woman with a very happy baby carrying the luggage on her head. And here's another family. Again, probably not too wealthy. Their luggage is all wrapped up, but quite often, and these immigrant families had large families. You can see there's 5 children here. They are carrying wine, and sometimes water on shipboard was not that great, and a lot of the poorer families had to travel in what it was called steerage, which was underneath instead of having cabins and kind of an open cargo type area. So when they got to America, they would live in what was called ethnic enclaves. And basically these are immigrant ghettos. And this made sense. We're going to talk about the political machines, but people would meet these boats and, oh, you're Italian. Okay, we'll take you to the Italian part of the city, this ethnic enclave. And then you would have people there that could speak your language, that would help you find work, would help you find some place to live. And all they would want in return is your vote. So most of the times these were very crowded. We'll talk about that when we get to urbanization. But we still have in the large cities these ethnic enclaves. You have maybe a Polish section, an Italian section, Spanish section, and so forth. So this is an example. You can see no air conditioning. So during the summertime's nice months, people would move their wares outside and actually sell things on the streets. And you can see how crowded these areas are and how close these buildings are together. So back then, when people came to America, it was really important for them to assimilate into society, to become Americans. And they coined the phrase the melting pot, okay? And basically, if you throw everything into a great big pot and you stir and stir and stir, pretty soon everything kind of looks alike. And that was the idea of immigrants coming in and becoming part of this great American culture. Now, as immigrants come in, many tend to keep their culture. You'll see people in their same ethnic dress, same religions, sometimes even not really learning the language, and they're more like a salad bowl, easily identifiable. Okay, so this is the melting pot. Melting pot equals assimilation, Americanization, learn English, fit in. And then the salad bowl, you are American, but you do retain that native identity in dress, culture, and sometimes even language. So was it all good? Not necessarily. Okay, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to 1892, more and more white Americans are moving to California. They're looking for work, and the Chinese are working for less. They are taking American jobs, and it got to be a political thing, and they pushed to stop Chinese from coming into America. So this is significant in that it is the very first federal restriction on immigration. Okay, I encourage you to watch this YouTube video about the Chinese Exclusion Act. As the people from Asia came in, they went to a place called Angel Island, and Angel Island is the Ellis Island of the West, and it is quite beautiful. However, the Asian people, the Japanese and the Chinese, were not treated as well and processed as quickly as the people that were coming in Ellis Island. So they processed about 1 million people. It's also a museum right now. It's a slower, and it was pretty harsh. They put people in dormitory-like situations, separated families, and it was not a pleasant experience for a lot of our Asian immigrants. You can see a ship coming in for processing at Angel. These are women waiting, and you can see they're shy, they're completely covered, and when they were put in these dormitory-like situations, there was no privacy, no shower curtains. things like that, and it was very, very difficult for many of them. Looks like it's a beautiful place, and actually it's pretty from the outside, but it's pretty tough on the inside. So sometimes where they settled, their ethnic enclave was mostly San Francisco area, California, and sometimes young men would terrorize these Chinese. They'd come in and they'd cut their pigtails, and that was a really big deal because you can see how long this hair is, and it was kind of like a status symbol, and it was it was kind of a very evil thing to do, to terrorize Chinese men. That guy in the middle looks like Hitler to me. So the Asian folks were interrogated. Do you have money? Do you have family? Where are you coming from? And they made it very, very difficult for them in some cases. You can see this is poetry talking about the conditions that they're living in, and here they're coming for freedom and hope, and this is what they were finding in these So a couple of reasons, and you're going to have thousands and thousands of people leaving the South, going to Detroit, Chicago, New York City, Boston, mostly major cities where they are hoping to find work in the factories. And what they're leaving is these Jim Crow laws, this de jure segregation, and what they're finding is de facto segregation and racism in the North.